Well, let's start. First of all, good to see you again, Deidre. Caleb.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
You know, we've been working together, True and Fairway, for more than 2 years on enterprise AI. And I think the next 20 minutes or so, we're really just going to talk about some of the insights and learnings that's come from that collaboration. So let's get going. So I guess I want to sort of start maybe at the beginning. If I could sort of take you guys back maybe 3 years. What were your expectations for AI at that time for Fairway? Maybe, yeah, Deidre.
So I think we really started out, trying to figure out, this all kind of started with a discussion of how do we get cleaner data, fewer post-closing conditions. Yeah. Historically, the mortgage industry is a series of manual processes repeated over and over with each person that touches the file. So there's no systematic way to see that one person has checked and validated data, so the next person just repeats the same process over and over. And then we still get to the closing table, the borrower's name is misspelled, their social security number is incorrect. So, our thought was, how do we solve that problem? How do we go back and clean up the data, clean up the file, and have more of a streamlined process? How do we get out of the cycle of hiring when the volume picks up, yep, and then having to lay people off when the volume drops down? So that's really where we started out with. We interviewed a lot of companies because there's an endless amount of options out there, right? All great. But a lot of them started in the middle of the process. They had an underwriting solution or they had a post-closing solution. And our thought was, why would we start in the middle and not start at the beginning, get the data right for the first time, and then it's less work for everybody else down the line?
Yeah. Well, let me kind of bring you then to today. You guys are certainly a lot more expert, a lot more wisdom about AI than you were, let's say, 3 years ago. But what do you think about mortgage? And I'll turn to you. Is it just so complicated and nuanced that AI is just going to have a tough road to make an impact? Or is the opposite true, where maybe it's actually going to have a more glorious impact? What do you think, Caleb, in terms of your thinking here?
So my personal opinion is, mortgage is probably the most ripe for AI. We have so much manual task and processes that, AI can really solve for that. And I think one of the things that when we started this process, like Deidre mentioned, the focus was, thinking about the whole ecosystem, making sure that we're removing friction across the board, not just in one little spot. But it really is to focus on what's most important, which is the borrower, and making sure that our loan officers could remove the friction in the origination process and focus on talking to the borrowers at one of the scariest transactions of most people's lives. And so that's how we kind of looked at it. And I do think AI has the ability to transform the industry, to allow more folks to get into homes if it's used properly.
Yeah. Are your expectations actually higher than they originally were, that Deidre described?
I would say they are.
I would too. I mean, there's no linear process to AI transformation. You're going to fail a whole lot throughout the process. You're going to adjust the plan many, many times as you go through it. It is not linear.
It's interesting. Fairway is one of the few lenders that has decided to sort of be all in and roll it out at an enterprise level. I mean, so many lenders are, and probably many in this audience, are piloting a use case, sometimes a real narrow use case, to sort of get some kind of ROI metric. But you're all in on it, and I guess I wanted to sort of kind of explore that a little bit with you. What kind of put you in that direction, and once you're there, kind of how are you going to measure the kind of success at the enterprise level?
I think when we started this process, success was measured by how much quicker we could get the file through the origination process. We're were we able to cut off days in underwriting or days in processing, or could a processor take on more files per processor, and same thing with underwriting. You know, as this has evolved, I think success is differently defined now for us, at least in my book, where the industry, and especially thinking about the borrower, there's so much competition for the borrower. When they go to put an offer on a home, you know, speed matters. It's one of Fairway's core values. And it really does matter on the origination side to get that pre-approval and get the underwrite done as quickly as possible so that that borrower is at a better competitive advantage. So obviously success looks like you can measure it through KPIs and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, one of the toughest things to measure is that borrower. Are you able to make an impact for the borrower to make the offer on the home and follow through and get the loan?
Right, I agree. But I also feel like the enterprise level really allows us more to develop a process, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the struggles with AI is developing a process, because you do have to change your process, right?
Yeah.
You can't keep doing the same thing that you're doing and just add more work into it. That defeats the purpose. Our idea is to eliminate steps in the process, not add steps to the process.
I mean, there's some things that show up at an enterprise level that just don't show up at a small pilot. I mean, Fairway is a large enterprise. I mean, you get 600 locations and over 2,000 loan officers. I mean, this is big time scale.
Right.
And you'll measure it at that enterprise level. What's some things that you might measure, Deidre?
I mean, I think, you know, there's a lot of fear, right, with AI that it's going to take away people's jobs. That's not our intent. Our intent is to be able to do more loans with the same amount of people.
Yeah.
And again, withstand the market fluctuation so that we're not hiring, laying off,
Right.
Because that's not beneficial for anybody.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not fun for us either as a company. So, you know, we're trying to make the process more efficient. And I feel like, you know, again, like Caleb said, you can measure that with KPIs, with data, you know, the time from the beginning of the file and through the closing, things like that. The number of post-closing conditions you have, the number of buybacks that you have on your loans. All of those things are good measurements, but in reality, it's probably more about the adoption than anything else.
Yeah. So let's talk about adoption, because this industry has not a good track record for adopting technology. I mean, I talk to lots of CEOs and owners, and they're always disappointed in how technology got adopted. And I think the culprit, and I think we agree on this, is change management. It's just an area that's not well understood, you know, and certainly not well invested. And I know you guys live it every day. Maybe you could sort of talk a little bit about what change management looks like in practice at Fairway.
So one of the things that we do when we have a big change like this is we try to get a pilot group or beta group of people that are dedicated to trying the process, right? And then we have feedback calls with them on a regular basis. We get feedback on the system. We go back to the vendor. We ask them for enhancements. How do we improve the process? We want to make sure that the usability of the product is also is easy to adapt. It's intuitive, things like that. So that's what we rely on the pilot group for. Then when we start to roll out more to the broader company, we use those people as our change agents.
Yes.
Because on an executive level, we can talk about how great this is and how wonderful it is and how it's going to revolutionize the industry. But the people that matter are the ones that are actually using it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can agree we're not going to top down AI, right? Is that, Caleb, your feeling as well? We're not going to push AI from the top down.
Yeah, so yes and no. So I think what really helps in the AI transformation process and the adoption piece is to have a communication from the top down. Now, Fairway's kind of culture is we don't push like that. We want the natural adoption. However, it's good to have leadership coming in from an executive level and educating we're not doing this to replace people. We're doing this to augment you, make you faster, reduce the friction, allow you to talk to the borrower more, spend more time with your realtor partners. And so, no, it's not pushed from the top down, but it's important for the top down to be communicating what our intent is to kind of ease that friction for employee resistance that is naturally going to occur. And one of the things I think has been pretty key in this transformation process is the education surrounding AI.
Absolutely.
You really can't go into it. If folks don't fully understand what AI is, what it's going to do in the origination process, and education is a tactic to be able to ease that comfort level and that employee resistance. Once folks understand what it's going to do and how it's going to work, the guard comes down and you're able to increase your adoption level.
Yeah. Actually, I want to poke on that a little bit more, if you don't mind. I mean, the thing about AI is actually not well understood at all. I mean, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. I mean, yesterday there was no AI, and today we're supposed to be all using it in production, right? So it came at us so fast. Most people, I find, think of AI as a model, right? Whether it be a large language model or a machine learning model and all that. And while the model's capability is certainly very, very important, how it gets consumed is equally important to drive adoption. And I thought, Deidre, because you spend a ton of time on consuming how AI gets consumed,
Right.
What is a good AI experience? What are you looking for a user experience on AI?
So, I mean, what we're looking for is basically, what we want to do is start managing the loan from an exception-based process, right? And I think that's one of the misconceptions about AI is that it's perfect. And, maybe if we're looking at the same documents over and over, it might be perfect, but we all know in reality that's not the case. So, there is an error rate with AI, but there's also a human error rate as well.
Yep.
So the AI error rate is actually lower than the human error rate, even though it's easier to detect the AI error rate than it is the human error rate. But that is one of the things that we find as a misconception with AI as well. And that, it's just magically going to do all of these things. And I think that that's not where we're trying to go with it. What we want to do is just work off of an exception basis. We want our people to still be able to make the decisions. We just want to feed them the data in a more comprehensive, easier to process way. So, our idea is not for our AI to take over decision making. It's basically just to enable the user a better opportunity to make a decision quicker.
What about interoperability? I mean, I think about mortgage end-to-end is so many services, so many tools, so many platforms. They all got to work together. So interoperability has to come into the equation for AI. And I guess maybe this is yours, Caleb.
So integration is key. I don't think that you can implement any AI into the system and just lay it on top of a workflow. You really have to redesign it, and part of that redesign is also picking your partners that have good integration with each other. There are things that some partners do really well. There's some that excel in other areas, and that interoperability is critical. We talk a lot about the efficiency gains after the application process. But if you kind of back up a little bit and you look at the point of sale and you look at the application process, the integration piece is more critical, I think, in that spot than it is after. And the reason why I say that is the amount of data that you can get into the application process only furthers, like Deidre pointed out earlier, how much better the downstream process is going to be. So if you're pulling in account information and VOE and all of that information up front, the downstream process is a lot easier. And part of that is the integrations.
Yeah, yeah. I guess what I think I'm hearing is, I mean, there's AI and then there's SaaS. I think what you're really saying is you really want an AI SaaS combination, a platform where you've got strong AI, but it's being delivered in a very intuitive way for the users. Does that kind of describe it well, you think?
Absolutely, and the usability, right, goes towards the adoption.
Yeah, yeah.
So the more usability you have in the system, the higher adoption rate that you're going to get.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One thing that I was always impressed with, actually there's lots of things about Fairway that I'm impressed with now that I got to know you guys really well, but one of the things that really impressed me was about 3 years ago, you made this decision, a very conscious decision, to go build a strong data foundation first. I remember I was in that discussion, and I guess you thought about what that's going to do downstream for underwriting and post-close, et cetera. Maybe you could sort of kind of take us back into what got behind that idea of a strong data foundation first.
Well, and kind of back to the original idea, right? How do we clean up the data? How do we have a stronger file throughout the process with fewer mistakes? So, we kind of realized, okay, we have to start at the beginning, right? We can't, there's some things you can't fix at post-closing, but those people are the ones that are least familiar with the file.
Yeah.
So least familiar with the borrower, least familiar with their situation. So it made more sense to start with that at the very beginning and make sure that we have solid data at the beginning that matches all the documentation that the borrower provides, and then we can carry that forward throughout the process.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a linkage between a strong data foundation and AI you can trust? You think there's linkage?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if the AI model is not pushing back strong data extraction, or at least asking for an exception handling on that piece, then eventually that will fail, right? It's that error rate.
Yeah, almost seems like all the underwriting automation that you want to do, income, whatever that might be, it needs that strong data foundation.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to me, the recipe that I think I've heard here is strong data foundation, gives you trusted AI, right? You want to consume it, I guess, in an AI SaaS kind of platform, and then you really want to invest in change management. Is that kind of the recipe? I know it's still being developed, this recipe, but does that capture it, do you think?
Yeah, so yes, I do think that captures it very well. And I think one of the things I wish we would have understood more when we originally started was the change resistance that we were going to see associated with AI. And I know we keep harping on it, but AI has got people so uncomfortable with adopting technology, ChatGPT and all that kind of stuff. That's one thing. But when you start using agentic AI and other technology to automate functions of somebody's job, that's more scary for them.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, if I had some advice for people who are just starting out on this journey, it's really going to come down to have a workforce plan before you start. And what does that look like? That looks like making sure that you're educating your employees. It's not meant to replace you. We're going to reskill you in something else. We're here to augment you, and give them that comfort and be transparent with what your goals are. Where I have seen some of my peers in the industry fail is they're not leading with the communication up front and the transparency, and then they get to a wall.
Yeah. Yeah, recent studies, I know HBR did one that talked about augmentation. AI as an augmentation strategy is going to have a much bigger win long term than if you think about it as a replacement one. So I think that's, yeah.
Absolutely. But it's also important to choose a vendor that, we all know as soon as you implement technology, it's outdated, right? So it's also important to choose a vendor that's continuing to implement change, make enhancements, and keep up with the technology that's out there.
And I'll also say, lessons learned or some advice, in my opinion, you've got to be able to take a risk on AI where the mortgage industry's been in the past is we're very risk adverse when we start to adopt technology. And with AI, you kind of have to be ready to adjust your risk level. And that's for the greater good to get that competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And I would also say it's not an immediate ROI.
Nope.
So it's a process.
It's a process. You
And
grow-
it
you
will
grow
take
into
some
it.
time
Yeah.
to realize that.
Yeah. Well, I think our time is up. This has been great, having you guys on stage and learning your insights and all that. I mean, I also want to thank you for just the pioneering work you do and pushing AI to the enterprise, because, I mean, everybody wants to roll it out at the enterprise level. That's kind of what we want to get to. But there needs to be some pioneers, and I'm glad we're working together so well.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Steve.
you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yep.
Go back, this is the moment.